doing good, man. Thank you for accommodating my situation.
All good, all good. I like your sweatshirt.
Oh, appreciate it, dude. I love Tiff, man.
Yeah,
All right, so we can go ahead and kind of get into it if you're ready.
sure.
All right. My name is Samuel Leggy with JVS Media and Productions. Will, thank you for talking with me, man.
My pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So, first question off the bat is working with Bradley, you also being a co-writer with this. What was the inception of this? Like, how did this start? You're such a great natural comedian, but also actors. But how did this start? What was the inception of it?
The inception was that I met this comedian John Bishop, and he told me a story of how he became a stand-up, which was he was getting a divorce and he didn't want to pay cover charge on a bar where they were doing open mic. And the guy said to him, "Yeah, if you put your name down, you don't have to pay the cover." And he went in. That part's true.
Wow.
And John Bishop is a great comedian out of the UK. And at the time, he had no connection to stand up. And he went in and they ended up calling him up. And it was the first time he kind of really talked about what he was going through was when he was on stage. I was like, wow, that's really cool. And then he went on to continue to be a stand-up, not a stand-up, but continue to do open mics every week because it made him feel better as he was going through this process of
Mhm.
getting divorced. And so I thought that's a really compelling story. Then his wife actually came in, his soon-to-be ex-wife came in, all that's true, and saw him up on stage, and he hadn't told anybody in his life that he was doing it.
Wow.
And they had this thing, and then they started having an affair because she saw him doing this thing, and he was happy and kind of changed by the process of doing the stand-up. And then and it wasn't until a while later that they actually had the conversation they'd never been able to have before.
Mhm.
So that story was told to me by the great John Bishop, and I was like, wow, it's really compelling, and started writing it for a few years, working on it in various incarnations, and then Bradley and I really tight, and I gave it to him just because I wanted to see if he had any thoughts, any notes on the script, and what he thought we could do. And he called me and said, I want to work on this with you. And I want to direct it, and I want to rewrite it, and all this stuff. And I said, yeah, come on.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah.
I've been following you since Arrested Development, and one of the things that I think you have this natural ability to make people laugh, but also express a lot with your emotion without doing too much. And like with this specific character, was it always going to be you that was going to play the character? And then the other side of it, emotionally, there's a lot that you can see that is heavy on this man while he's doing the stand up. And like, was that hard for you to convey that much emotionally while also being naturally what you do?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point. It was doing I'm not a stand-up, so doing the stand-up and doing it was hard and scary when I was in prep and I was going up every night. But you make a great point. Going in and doing the stand-up and knowing where this character Alex was in his life. And my instinct as a performer is to go up there and no matter what, just try to make people laugh, figure out a way to do it. And to kind of stay on story and what we were doing was tough. I don't mean to say like it was hard for me not to be funny. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like that was the real for me the challenge. The scariest part was conveying what this guy is going through. It's a muscle that I hadn't exercised in a long time. To go out and to really see what this guy's going through, not only when he's on stage, but in those pivotals in all the scenes. For me, that was the most challenging thing for me. If I'm being totally honest, was kind of getting into that, preparing for this part to play a guy who's like a very sort of, playing a guy who's going through what he's going through in a real way that felt authentic and had a sense of realism about it. Um, that was tough day in and day out for me to think like, can I do it every day, getting on set and walking it through with Bradley and being like, man, how am I going to get through this scene? And then going and doing the stand up and with everything that we know about what's going on in his life and to convey where he's at, trying to make a joke, do all those things in that way with all this other information. It was a tough balancing. It was a real challenge for me as an actor in a way that I'd never been challenged before, for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, I was gonna ask, as far as like some of the stand-up scenes, it's a close shot, right? Like it's just on you some of the
Yeah.
times, and then it pans out to this very interesting angle, so you can kind of get the drift of where the audience is gonna like react, but you don't know that unknown. Like he kind of feels like us as the audience are actually doing the thing as well. How did y'all set the stage for that? Like to make it feel immersive while at the same time different? I guess best way I can put it.
Well, Bradley always knew that he wanted to see this face of this stand-up of me as Alex. And to answer your question, yes, I was always gonna, this was something that I wanted to do in my mind when I first met John, when we first started writing it, when Bradley came on, when we did, and it changed course with Bradley and bringing Laura on, all that stuff was by design. I knew that I wanted to do this. I wanted to do this challenge. And Bradley came up with the concept and really solidified it, especially when you're doing camera testing, that he wanted it to be all in that 1:6:1 ratio, and do all in that 40 millimeter lens, handheld, right up there in my face. I mean, Bradley's as close to me as I am to this, to you in this, to the computer, to the camera in this way, talking to me, operating, because Bradley operated most of the film,
Oh,
right?
really?
Oh yeah,
I
he
didn't know.
operated most of the film, not just directed, but operated.
That's so.
So Matty Libatique, and we had a great operator. We have Scott Sakamoto, who's one of the best operators of all time, and Matthew Libatique is the DP. But Bradley's operating, so he's able to talk to me in real time as we're doing it. He's
Mm,
at the camera talking to me like this close. It was very intimate the whole time, in that way. And what happened was, I think part of it was Bradley understood, this is a to sort of convey the authenticity of this piece. It had to feel very intimate and be shot in a way that's less like you're watching it and more like you're part of it. And as you said, you get a sense, you get a feel of what it's like, what Alex is doing. You get a feel of like what it's like to be right there in the room
mhm.
in all the scenes, but especially in those close-ups in the comedy when it's right up in his face like that. Um, you want to be able to feel it
Yeah.
almost and to feel that discomfort. The first time that he goes up on stage, Alex, and that's the first time you see his face full on, by the way.
Right.
Always been three-quarter in profile up into that point, and that first time when he's just like this and he goes, "I think I'm getting a divorce,"
Yeah.
is the first time you see him full front and his face is filling the frame.
Mhm.
And you want to feel that anticipation that he has of what am I going to say? I don't know, and I'm just going to be honest about where I'm at. And and you want the air to be sucked out of the room a little bit. It's a real audience that we had in there.
I was gonna ask that. Was that a real audience, or did you kind of have the actors kind of?
Well, you had to, these are professional background, atmosphere actors or whatever, but they're brought in, but told to just react the way they're going to react.
That's
There's no
awesome.
direction. It's not like it's just let's see what happens.
Wow.
And that's again such the beauty of Bradley and the way that he makes movies. And I know he's my friend, but I am also just in awe of what he can do. He's just such an incredible artist, and it was always like he understood what he wanted, how everything was planned and preordained, but to let stuff happen in the moment. Um, we know what the script is, we know what the story is, we know all those things, but then just to see what happens when it happens in the moment, watch it unfold and watch this guy go up and shoot it and have these people really there and and come out on the stage and say, with and I'm really on stage and all the people are really right there and he's operating and just go, I think I'm getting a divorce.
Gosh, it gives you chills. The thing I was gonna last thing I was gonna ask is you kind of mentioned about John. How much time did you spend with John, kind of unpacking emotionally what he's dealing with, but then also with Laura, did she connect with the ex-wife as well, or I y'all have natural chemistry, you and Laura, right?
Mm,
But there's so much where you start to transition to somebody else.
yeah.
Every single really good performance is a transformation that happens. So I just know how much time you spent kind of unpacking the heart of that.
Yeah, I mean, I spent quite a bit of time with John. When he told me that when Mark Chappell and I first started talking to him years ago about what that process was and what he felt, what was the thing that drove him, when he stumbled upon this bar and that first night going through, being on his own. Mondays were the days he dropped his kids off. We don't really say it as distinctly in the film, but Monday was the day he dropped his kids off at his ex's house, and then he'd go to an apartment by himself. And so that feeling, that hollow feeling that he had, and stumbling into this bar and not wanting to pay the cover, putting his name down, and then they actually call him up, and he goes up, and he says for the first time his truth that he never really sort of said out loud what that felt like, and the relief that he got.
Mm.
And then he started going back again. And he didn't tell anybody. And I think because he wanted to protect that feeling that he got. And if he told anybody else, it would become, he didn't go with the intention of becoming a stand-up. He kept going because it made him feel good. And we tried to capture that. Laura talked to his wife for sure. But Laura and I really started talking about what that is and what that process is like. And I knew her a little bit, but we ended up doing a lot of work, and we did some workshops together with Bradley and to talk about really being sensitive to the material in the story we're trying to tell. And yeah, that for me again was like the jumping off into playing this guy or being this guy uh, as much as I could, and understanding, every day what every scene was and what it meant to Alex in those moments. That was the hard part for me. That was, trusting that I could do it, breathing through it,
Well, you did it, man. Congratulations. Thank you so much for talking with me, and look to see what you got next. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, man.
Absolutely.